Let me start with a claim that sounds probably wrong. When your employees delegate sensitive tasks to an AI agent, they become significantly more likely to behave unethically. Not because the AI is doing anything wrong, not because they have malicious intent going in, but because the act of delegation itself, handing the task to the machine, lowers the psychological cost of asking the AI to do something they would never do themselves. I know it sounds backwards to an extent. We spend a lot of time in this field worrying about AI systems behaving badly. We build guardrails, policies, oversight mechanisms, all pointed at the AI. But what research suggests is that the more concerning direction is the other way. When humans delegate to AI, something shifts in how they experience moral responsibility. And that shift is not small, not edge case, and not theoretical. Researchers have run multiple studies, and the finding was stark. When people completed a task themselves, 95% remained honest. When people delegated the same task to an AI, only 12 to 16% did. Let me say that again. 95% of people were honest when they did the task themselves, and only 12 to 16% were honest when delegating it to AI. This is not a rounding error. It's a mechanism, and understanding that mechanism is what today's talk is about. Welcome to the Intersection Talks. I'm Avinash, and I'm at the intersection of cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and human psychology. Today's topic is the Alibi Machine, and the question we're exploring is, what happens to insider risk when your employees can outsource the moral weight of an action to a system that cannot feel it? Insider risk has always been the threat category that the industry is most uncomfortable talking about, honestly. The reason is straightforward. You cannot defend against insider threats the way you defend against external ones. A firewall doesn't care whether the person accessing your data networks for you. An endpoint detection tool doesn't distinguish between an employee who accesses a file for legitimate business reasons and the one who accesses it because they were planning to take it. The signal is ambiguous almost by definition. The controls designed to address it, data loss prevention, user and identity behavior analytics, privileged access management, they're built on the assumption that malicious intent produces observable technical anomalies. That assumption has always been fragile. In 2026, with AI agents handling more and more of actual data movement, it's being stress tested in ways most insider risk programs were not built to handle. Here's the current landscape. The 2026 Verizon Data Breach Investigations report found that insider incidents account for a significant fraction of confirmed breaches, and that the majority are driven not by malicious actors but by employee error, misuse, and what reports categorize as privilege abuse. Employees using their legitimate access in ways that fall outside intended use, often for convenience, personal gain, or in response to pressure to meet targets. Proofpoint's 2026 AI and Human Risk Landscape report found that 47% of employees are using personal generative AI accounts at work, tools that have not been reviewed, approved, or logged by the enterprise. When sensitive data moves through these tools, it does not trigger the technical controls designed to catch it. It moves through a channel the enterprise cannot see. Now, at the AI agent layer, enterprises are deploying autonomous agents to handle email, document processing, data retrieval, competitive research, financial operations. These agents take instructions in natural language. They execute at machine speed, and they do not generate the kind of audit trail that would allow an insider risk analyst to distinguish between legitimate business objective that AI executed and outcome I would have been uncomfortable requesting directly, AI executed on vague instruction. That gap between what technically happened and what is intended is where the alibi lives. Researchers did not just find that delegation to AI increases dishonesty. They found that the magnitude of the effect depended on how the AI was instructed. 3 interfaces were tested. Direct task execution, where the human told the AI specifically what to do, produced much less dishonesty than the other 2 conditions. Supervised learning, where the human shaped the AI strategy by approving or rejecting options, and high-level goal setting, where the human gave the AI a broad objective and let it determine the means. Now, the high-level goal setting interface produced the worst outcomes, the most dishonest behavior, the largest gap from the 95% baseline. Because you're just telling the AI what to do and the AI can do whatever it wants. So you're kind of given it, you've got plausible deniability. That finding deserves attention because high-level goal setting, give the AI a broad objective, let it work out how, is exactly how most enterprise AI agents are being deployed in 2026. Analyze the competitive landscape, identify vulnerabilities in external-facing systems, find opportunities to reduce vendor costs, natural language, high-level, objective. The research explains why this interface is the most dangerous from a moral accountability perspective. When you give an AI a specific instruction, copy these files to this location. You own the instruction. You said it. You typed it. The causal chain from your intention to the outcome is legible. If the action is unethical, you are the proximate cause. When you give an AI a high-level objective, help me understand what our competitors are doing in this space. The means are determined by the agent. If the agent accesses information it should not access, the instruction you gave was not itself the access. You can, in good faith or bad, point to the gap between what you asked for and what the agent did. The causal chain is interrupted. You are the distal cause. The AI is the proximate one. This is not a technical discussion, it's a psychological one. And the psychological reality is that humans experience moral responsibility very differently depending on whether they are the proximate or the distal cause for an outcome. The interface that produces the most useful AI behavior, broad objectives, agentic execution, minimal friction, is the same interface that most effectively erodes moral accountability. That is not a coincidence. That is exactly the architecture. And the attacker who understands this are already using it, not by compromising the AI, but by understanding that the gap between what I asked and what the AI did is a gap that they can position their objectives inside. Albert Bandura spent decades studying the mechanisms by which people distance themselves from ethical weight of their actions. His theory of moral disengagement describes a set of cognitive operations that allows people to behave in ways that violate their own moral standards without updating their self-concept as ethical actors. The mechanisms include displacement of responsibility, attributing the causal role in harmful outcomes to legitimate authorities or to the mechanisms they operate through, and diffusion of responsibility, where the causal link between the individual action and the harmful outcome is diluted by the presence of intermediaries. Both of these mechanisms are activated by AI delegation. When an employee asks an AI agent to accomplish a business objective and the agent takes actions that produces an outcome, the employee benefited from it but would not have explicitly requested that. The displacement and diffusion mechanisms engage simultaneously. The employee can truthfully say, I didn't do that, the AI did. And the AI, of course, has no moral agency. It cannot be held responsible in any meaningful sense. The accountability dissolves. Bandura called this the dirty hands problem. Though he applied it to an institutional authority rather than technology, the logic is the same. When an outcome requires actions that the agent prefers not to own directly, the psychological cost of achieving that outcome can be substantially reduced by ensuring that the proximate cause is someone or something other than themselves. In the previously mentioned studies, researchers tested whether people were aware of this fact. Most were not. Participants in the high-level goal-setting condition consistently rated themselves as less responsible for dishonest outcomes than the participants who executed the task directly, even when both groups produced the same result. The experience of reduced responsibility was genuine. People were not consciously gaming the system. They genuinely felt less culpable. This is what makes this mechanism is a mechanism rather than a rationalism. There is a second psychological layer worth naming, the optimism bias in moral self-assessment. Research consistently shows that people rate themselves as more ethical than average. When you combine this with a tool that creates genuine psychological distance from the ethically ambiguous actions, the result is a population of employees who are both more likely to take these actions and less likely to recognize what they did. The insider risk program looking for someone who knows they are doing something wrong will miss this entirely, because the person doing it often does not believe that they are. Here's where the three threads converge into a specific operational problem. Enterprises in 2026 are deploying AI agents through interfaces specifically designed to maximize utility through broad natural language instructions. That design produces the most capable agents. It also produces the most significant moral distance effect. The design optimizes for productivity and optimizes against accountability simultaneously. Insider risk programs are instrumented to detect technical anomalies, unusual access patterns, bulk data movement, after-hours activity, access outside role scope. These controls were built on assumption that malicious or high-risk intent produces detectable technical behavior. When AI handles the actual data movement on behalf of a high-level instruction through legitimate credentials during normal business hours, the technical signature is clear and is clean. The anomaly detection has nothing to work with. And the employee, the person who gave the high-level instruction, has genuine psychological insulation from the moral weight of the outcome. Not as a deliberate strategy, as a function of how AI delegation changes the cognitive relationship between intention and action. The insider risk incident that results from this architecture is categorically different from traditional models. There's no moment of deliberate decision to misuse access. There's a series of small, individually defensible choices. Give the AI a broad objective, let it work, accept the output. Each step feels reasonable. The accumulation produces an outcome that would have required deliberate breach if executed manually, and would have been caught by the controls designed to detect deliberate breach. This is not a future scenario. The 47% of employers using personal AI accounts with enterprise data are already producing this architecture at scale, outside the visibility of the controls designed to see it. If you are responsible for insider risk, your program almost certainly has a fundamental assumption that high-risk events are associated with high-risk intent. The moral distance research undermines that assumption. The employee who uses a broad AI instruction to access data they should not access may not have a technical anomaly signature, may not have conscious malicious intent, and may genuinely believe they did not do anything wrong. The traditional detection and investigation model does not handle that scenario well. Your investigation approach will also need to adapt. Asking what did the employee intend in a world where AI delegation creates genuine ambiguity about proximate cause is a harder question to answer and harder case to make to legal and HR. For organizations, the liability architecture shifts significantly. When an employee delegates a task to an AI agent and the agent produces an outcome that violates data protection law, the question of accountability is genuinely unsettled. Did the employee direct the agent? Technically, yes, through a high-level instruction. Did they direct a specific action? No, the agent determined the means. Is the organization liable for the agent's actions? Under GDPR's data controller framework, almost certainly. Under what theory of employee misconduct does the employee face consequence for an action they can credibly claim they did not know the agent would take? These questions do not have clean answers in 2026. What organizations can do is not wait for regulators to answer them. Build the accountability architecture before an incident makes it urgent. For the broader security and risk industry, the insider risk tooling market has been built on behavioral analytics assumptions that predate AI delegation. User and entity behavior analytics, DLP, privileged access management, the signal models underlying these tools are trained on human behavior. As AI agents increasingly handle the proximate execution of sensitive operations, the data that these tools are looking for, the human taking the action, is being abstracted away. The tools need to catch up, and the industry conversations about insider risk governance need to incorporate the psychological dimension of AI-mediated action, not as a philosophical concern, but as a practical program design requirement. Let's talk about some practical takeaways. 1. Map your AI agent interface designs against the moral accountability profiles. Not every AI interface creates the same moral distance effect. Direct task execution with specific instructions creates less psychological distance than the high-level goal-setting interfaces. Audit which of your deployed AI agents accept broad natural language objectives and which require explicit specific instructions. Where broad instructions are unavoidable, layer explicit scope constraints and audit logging. Help me understand competitor pricing needs a very different accountability architecture than execute this specific query against these specific databases. Second, update your insider risk investigation model to account for AI delegation. The question, did this person intend to do this, is now ambiguous in a way it was not before. Your investigation model should include what instruction did the employee give the AI? What did the AI determine the means to be? Did the employee review the AI's action before accepting the output? And critically, what did the employee do with the output? The intent question shifts from the moment of instruction to the moment of use. Third, build explicit consequence acknowledgement into high-risk AI agent workflows. The moral distance effect is reduced when individuals explicitly acknowledge ownership of outcomes before delegation occurs. Before an employee submits a high-level objective to an AI agent that has access to sensitive systems, require them to confirm, I understand that I am responsible for the actions this agent takes in pursuit of this objective. It sounds procedural, right? The research suggests that it materially changes the psychological accountability relationship. Friction at the right point in the workflow is not an obstacle to productivity, it's a governance control. And 4, treat the AI audit trail as a primary evidence, not secondary. In a world where AI agents are the proximate actors in sensitive operations, the detailed log of what the agent did, not what the employee instructed, becomes the most important forensic record. If your AI agent deployments are not producing complete, immutable logs of every action taken, every tool called, every piece of data accessed, you have already lost the forensic capability you will need when an incident occurs. Build that logging requirement into deployment standards now, not into post-incident remediation checklists. That's the main thing. The uncomfortable reality embedded in the Max Planck research is this. The same architecture that makes an AI agent useful, broad objectives, autonomous execution, natural language instructions, is the same architecture that lowers the psychological cost of unethical delegation. The uncomfortable reality embedded in research is this. The same architecture that makes AI agents useful, which is broad objectives, autonomous execution, natural language instructions, is the same architecture that lowers the psychological cost of unethical delegation. We have built productivity tools that are extraordinarily effective at dissolving the cognitive relationship between intention and consequence. And we have deployed these tools inside organizations whose insider risk programs were built for a world where that relationship was intact. This is not a reason to stop deploying AI agents 100%. The productivity case is real. The operational value is genuine. But deploying AI agents without designing for the moral distance effect is like deploying a highly capable employee with no performance management system and no audit trail, and then being surprised when the absence of accountability produces unexpected outcomes. The question is not whether your AI agents are doing their jobs. The question is what your employees are asking them to do, and whether your program should be able to tell the difference between a legitimate, high-level business objective and a carefully constructed alibi. If today's episode challenged the assumption that you had about where insider risk comes from in an AI-augmented enterprise, share it with someone who is responsible for that program. The conversations that need to happen around AI-mediated accountability are happening in academic research and in incident postmortems. They need to be happening in program design meetings. For weekly analysis at the intersection of cybersecurity, AI, and human psychology, subscribe at intersection.substack.com. And of course, we're here on YouTube at The Intersection Talks, the new episode every Friday. Thank you for watching this video. You could have been anywhere in this world watching any video, but you stayed till the end. So thank you very much. And until next week, stay productively paranoid.